This video is brought to you by Sailrite. Visit Sailrite.com for all your project supplies, tools, and instructions. Make your own fire pit cover with supplies from Sailrite. Covering our fire pit will help prolong its life and will help keep the lava rock dry, which prevents the dangerous exploding or popping, sending small pieces of rock flying into the air. This happens when the fire pit is turned on and the rapidly heated moisture in the small pores of the lava rock expand and have no place to go. What is outlined in this tutorial video shows how to make a cover for a round fire pit, but the principles covered in this video will work for a variety of similar cover applications. Let's get started and show you how to make a fabric cover for your fire pit. First, we need to take some measurements of the fire pit. Measure across the fire pit to get the diameter of the circle. Then determine how much facing you would like to cover on the sides. I usually like to cover about 3/4% of the side, but that is only a preference and not a rule. Write those measurements down. This fire pit cover will have a top circle and a side facing, which will be sewn together to form the cover. To determine the cut size, use these calculations. Adding the 1/2 inch to the circle is for seam allowance, but why the extra 2 inches, you may be asking? Because a cover should be easy to remove and easy to install. The extra 2 inches will make that a reality, which in the end will make it so easy to install and remove the cover that you will use it on a regular basis. The 3-inch extra on the facing is for the sleeve for a tensioning rope. To determine the length of the facing, multiply the circle by pi and add an extra 12 inches for hems and a safety factor. One of the easiest ways to pattern a circle onto the fabric is to use a wooden yardstick and drill holes in it to make a homemade compass. Now an awl can be inserted near the end of the yardstick and a fabric marking pencil in a hole drilled to equal the cut diameter of the circle. To prevent damaging the floor under our fabric, a magazine was placed under the fabric. Notice a second helper is holding the awl in place. We have not forced it through the fabric. After the circle is drawn, confirm your measurement. Next, we'll pattern the facing. We are using a 60-inch wide fabric called Top.min, and we ordered 2 yards for this fire pit cover. Since we need a facing strip length of about 145 inches, we will have to join several strips of facing together to equal that length. For us, this illustration shows how we will nest the facing strips on our fabric blank. Why did we pick Top.min fabric? We'll discuss that later on. This dark color fabric marks easily with Sailrite's Scriball water-soluble marking pencils. A wet rag will fairly easily remove unwanted marks. The top circle and the side facing is now marked on our fabric. We're ready to cut it out. Top.min can be cut with scissors, but the fabric is prone to unraveling. In this demonstration, we cut a slit with scissors next to an edge cut with a hot knife. Notice the edge cut with scissors unravels easily, but the one edge cut with a hot knife does not. We recommend cutting Top.min with a hot knife to prevent unraveling on any raw edge that is not hemmed or covered in a binding tape. We will use the Sailrite edge hot knife with the cutting foot installed. This cutting foot helps prevent damage to the cutting surface under your fabric. I do not recommend cutting on a surface that you do not want scratched or damaged, because accidents may still happen even if you're using a cutting foot on your hot knife. The Sailrite Edge hot knife package comes with the knife, the R-blade, and the cutting foot you see here. It also comes with a plastic carrying case. It's a great deal for any DIYer. Let's quickly discuss why we chose to use Top.min fabric for this fire pit cover. Top.min has an 8-year warranty from the manufacturer. It's very abrasion and tear resistant, so it's great for applications where a loose-fitting cover will rest on sharp edges and corners. Top.min is breathable, but yet very water resistant. Top.min also sews easily and is resistant to seam puckering. Order Top.min from Sailrite today. Our side facings and our round circle are now cut out. Before we start sewing, it's always a good idea to check the thread tension. Do this with 2 layers of the fabric, usually a scrap section, that you will be sewing, and sew a short line of stitches. Now check the stitches to be sure the thread knots are pulled into the fabric, so they are in between the layers of fabric as much as possible. If you are to err on one side or the other, it is best to have the knots be on the underside rather than the top. In other words, it is best to have as little tension as possible so as to make the stitch look good, but not cause excessive puckering of the fabric. Too much upper tension will cause the fabric to pucker when the seam is finished. That fact is true of any type or brand of fabric, so it is a good habit to get into. Now we are ready to start sewing. We will start by sewing the 3 side facing strips together. We will do this with a semi-flat filled seam. We position the deluxe 5.5 inch magnetic guide down at the 1/2 inch mark on our needle plate. In other words, it is a 1/2 inch away from the needle. The 2 layers of fabric should have the outside surfaces facing each other. Top.min does not have a right side and a wrong side, so this is not too important for us. Edges should be lined up and a straight stitch about 6 millimeters in length should be sewn along that edge, reversing a few times at the beginning and the end of your sewing to lock the stitch in place. We will repeat this step with any other strip of side facing that needs to be joined together to make up our length. Be sure you always check which side is the right side and the wrong side once one has been sewn together. Now we will sew our top stitch in place, remove the magnetic guide, and splay the fabric out flat. Be sure that the 1/2 inch tail on the underside is facing on the side you will sew your top stitch to. Then sew this row of straight stitches about an 1/8 inch away from the fold that the first stitch row made here. Be sure to do some reversing at the start and end of your sewing. You can't see my left hand, but it is on the fabric and it's kind of pulling it apart as I sew the top stitch, so the seam is splayed open. Here is what that semi-flat felled seam looks like when it's completed. Now, on one of the short ends of the side facing, we will create a 1 inch double hem. We will use seam stick to pre-baste the hem in place prior to sewing. As we baste, then sew this hem in place, let's talk about the thread we are using. We've chosen to use a PTFE thread called Profilen. This is a lifetime guaranteed thread. Profilen sews better than any other brand PTFE thread in an oscillating hook sewing machine, like the Sailrite Ultrafeed sewing machine. Tenara is another brand of PTFE thread. It works great in rotary hook sewing machines. A PTFE thread is more expensive and harder to sew with than a polyester thread. A polyester thread like V-92 sews wonderfully with Top.min and is very cost effective, but it is only UV resistant and not UV proof. The choice is yours. We will use the Sailrite canvas patterning ruler to strike 2 lines along the bottom edge of this side facing on the underside, the side where the hem is facing up. The first line is 2 inches from the raw edge of the fabric. The next line will be 3 inches away from the raw edge of the fabric. These lines will be used as a reference to create our sleeve for the tensioning line or rope we will be using to tension the cover over the fire pit. As you can see, the ruler's lipped metal edge is against the edge of the fabric. We've inserted our fabric marking pencil into the proper hole and away we go. And now the line at 3 inches. Next, we will sew the side facing to the top circle. To do this, we will position our deluxe magnetic guide on the 1/2 inch mark of our needle plate again. There's the hem, there's our lines. Be sure the side where the 2 lines are struck is facing to the left. They and the hem should also be facing down. I find it easier to sew the facing on the underside because it has a long straight edge and the circle over it so I can see it better. If the fabric had a right side and wrong side, the right sides would be facing each other. Now sew the 2 assemblies together, keeping the edges of the fabric lined up with the deluxe magnetic guide as best as possible. Do not worry if they are not perfectly lined up. As long as they are close, your cover will look great. The facing on the underside is straight, so we just need to keep it pushed up against the deluxe magnetic guide. The round circle on top is carefully being rolled and fed so that its edge is lined up with the magnetic guide when its edge is directly across from the needle. Here we are coming to the beginning of the facing where we started. This is where the double hem was installed. We want to stop short of it by about 8 inches or more. Why? Because we need to create another double hem on the facing before we sew it completely down to the circle, and we need some slack to do that. Walk the fabric around by hand, as if it were sewn down to the circle. Then cut the fabric about 3 or 4 inches away from the double hem. Here, another double hem will be made, and we want that hem to lay over, or at least halfway over, the previous double hem. The extra is cut away, and then we will use seam stick to create the second hem. Then we'll sew it in place. We will not show all of this since we've shown it once. That hem is basted in place. Now we can sew it. As you can see, they will lay over each other, almost halfway here. Now we can finish up sewing the facing to the circle the rest of the way. When the hems are reached, several rows of reversing will be made to help secure that area very well. Okay, you could move on and finish up the sleeve on the facing, but if you wanted a more professional looking and stronger cover, you may want to sew a top stitch along the seam we just made, securing the two assemblies in place. That's what we've opted to do here. We will sew the 1/2 inch edge of fabric created by our seam to the facing edge of our cover. This again creates what is called a semi-flat felled seam. We will sew about a 1/8 inch away from the first stitch, splaying the fabric apart as we sew. We are sewing through our 1/2 inch flap of fabric on the underside. Keeping this stitch and the flap along the edge of the facing and not the circle does a couple of things for us. First, it keeps the needle holes along the vertical side of the cover, helping to prevent leakage if it were placed on the top. It also gives us a better appearance to the top fabric since the tail is tucked under along the facing.
You can feel the tail here. It's not over here, so I'm sewing through that.
Third, this 1/2 inch flap will also add to our chafe resistance of the cover along the sharp edge of the fire pit's bricks.
I'm going to put my hand underneath to make sure the tail is tucked that direction.
Here we are coming to the hem opening. More reversing is done here as well. It's now time to create the sleeve for the leech line rope that will be used to tension the bottom edge. Okay, to use or not to use seam stick to aid in the creation of the sleeve is a slightly controversial part of the process. I love seam stick basting tape and use it almost in all of my sewing. However, using it to create a sleeve for a rope does leave a slight possibility that the rope may come in contact with the glue and not move freely in the sleeve. But if you are careful, that issue can be avoided. Our first hem has been basted to the line we struck down on the facing. Now another row of seam stick is placed on top of that first hem. This second hem will be folded to the next struck down line. While this hem is being made, the leech line should be inserted inside of it along its folded edge. We are using the Sailrite canvas patterning ruler to press the hem and to help bond the glue well. In lieu of using the seam stick for the second fold, you could simply take the assembly to the sewing machine and fold this second hem in place while feeding the rope in the sleeve and sewing it down without the seam stick. If we had done that, it would eliminate the chance that the second row of seam stick may come in contact with the rope when the sleeve is completed. We will now take this over and sew this sleeve in place. We will sew 2 rows of a straight stitch. Why 2 rows? Well, we want to keep the rope away from the last section of seam stick we used. If we simply sewed along the inside folded edge, as seen here, the rope would surely come in contact with the glue, which is 3/8 inch wide. If we had not used the second row of seam stick, the single row of stitches you see here would be all that's needed for the completion of this sleeve. Be careful that the rope is not coming in contact with the seam stick. So occasionally I open up the sleeve to push the rope back when I notice it's too far from the outer edge of the fold. Here we are coming up to the end, and as always, do some reversing. Okay, now for that second row of stitches to keep the rope away from the seam stick. The deluxe magnetic guide is repositioned so the second row of stitches will look great next to the first. They will be parallel and straight to each other, thanks to the magnetic guide. This second row of stitches is outside the edge of the 3/8 inch seam stick, thus our rope will be free of it. We will use the Sailrite edge hot knife to cut the leech line rope, leaving about 12 inches coming out of the sleeve ends on both sides. This hot knife keeps the rope ends from unraveling. The YKK barrel lock closure 3/16 inch double is used to secure the rope when it is drawn up tight against the fire pit. A knot is typically made to the 2 ends of the rope to keep it from accidentally being pulled back through the sleeve. Okay, what's up with the ball you saw earlier on in the video? You probably already guessed it, but if not, you can see here that it helps to draw the fabric up as a tent pole or a support pole. That gives the fabric a slight pitch to help avoid pooling of standing water. A small ball like that makes a perfect support pole that does not require a grommet and will not abrade the fabric. Covering our fire pit will help prolong its life, and it will also help keep the lava rock dry, which prevents the dangerous exploding or popping, sending small pieces of rock flying into the air. Coming up next is the materials list and tools that we use to make this fire pit cover. For covers that are similar to this, Sailrite highly recommends Top.min 9 fabric. Pick your favorite color at Sailrite today. For more free videos like this, be sure to check out the Sailrite website or visit the Sailrite YouTube channel. It's your loyal patronage to Sailrite that makes these free videos available. Thanks for your loyal support. I'm Eric Grant, and from all of us here at Sailrite, thanks for watching.